The true nature of war. What is it really? Is it the relentless magnification of humanity's darker impulses, or the desperate struggle to hold on to the goodness within? To figure out this question, William and his friends signed up for the army together, but before he found any answer, he was already growing tired of the cruelty on the battlefield. So the idea of escaping the army began to take shape in his mind. Right at that moment, as they were preparing to enter combat, they suddenly saw a soldier who had fled back from the front line. Their officer immediately ordered this man to rejoin the unit and continue marching toward the fighting, but it was clear that this soldier's spirit had completely collapsed. He shouted that he had just escaped from a place like hell and that he would rather die than return. As he spoke, he tried to get up and run. The next second, he was shot on the spot by the officer. At that moment, the thought of escaping the army vanished completely from William's mind, because in that fleeing soldier, he had already seen what would happen to someone who tried to run. Right after that, under the officer's command, William began moving toward the combat zone. They held their rifles, leaned low and advanced inch by inch, staying alert to any danger that might appear around them. After searching for a while, they discovered that the fight had ended and the ground was covered with bodies. William thought he had narrowly avoided this battle, but just then, he suddenly heard the distant rhythm of war drums. Immediately, the officer ordered them to stop advancing and prepare for the battle about to begin. William stood anxiously, looking around. Sure enough, before long he saw faint silhouettes moving in the fog. The officer ordered them to raise their rifles and launch the first fierce volley at the approaching enemy. Then they hurried to reload in panic. In the chaos, William accidentally dropped his ammunition onto the ground. He quickly bent down to pick it up. At that moment, the enemy launched a deadly counterattack. By pure chance, William avoided dozens of incoming shots, but his best friend was hit and fell. His friend's final words to him were, "You must go home. You have to find a way to go back." Encouraged by his friend's last message, William stood up in anger, planning to escape during the confusion of the battle, but he was struck down by an exploding shell. He lay on the ground struggling for a long time before he managed to get up again. Then he immediately dashed toward the nearby forest. He rolled and crawled until he finally made it into the trees, but he soon realized this place was not safe either. At that moment, he sensed someone slowly approaching from not far away. To stay alive, he grabbed his bayonet and stabbed it hard into his own thigh. Then, enduring the pain, he smeared the blood running down his leg onto his body. Finally, he took a deep breath, closed his eyes and leaned against a tree, pretending to be dead. Soon, several enemy soldiers appeared beside him. William survived by sheer luck. After they left, he immediately stood up and ran for his life. As he fled, he tore off his uniform. While he was running, he suddenly remembered his childhood. Back then, he had also run across the grass, the same running, but the feeling now was one of heaven and one of a place like hell. To return home as soon as possible, William dragged his injured right leg and forced himself up again to continue forward. But just as he crossed a small river and tried to climb up the bank, he suddenly found a cold gun barrel pressed against his head. With no way out, he was instantly filled with despair. But fortunately, the people he encountered were neither his own side nor the enemy, but several enslaved men who had escaped from a plantation. They not only offered him water and food but also carefully bandaged his wounded leg. They helped him because they mistook him for an injured soldier from the Northern Army, and these men were planning to go find the Northern Army and sign up to fight. What they didn't know was that William was actually from the Southern Army, which opposed their freedom. But to stay alive, William had no choice but to keep hiding his identity as a Southern deserter. But before they had walked far, they unexpectedly ran into a group of Southern soldiers. Without saying a word, the Southern soldiers opened heavy fire on them. The enslaved men, who had no combat experience, suffered heavy casualties instantly. In the end, only one of them survived along with William. The two of them ran desperately. No one knew how long they had run before they suddenly tripped and fell. One Southern soldier, who had been chasing them non-stop, approached with excitement, but luckily, this soldier had run out of ammunition during the chase, so the surviving man drew his dagger and prepared for a fight to the death. Both men gripped their blades tightly, quietly waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But then, the man suddenly threw his dagger at the Southern soldier. The blade sank into the soldier's thigh, making him cry out in pain as he grabbed the wound. The man seized the chance, rushed forward, tackled him to the ground and wrapped his hands tightly around his neck. Watching this brutal scene, William, who had become a deserter because he hated killing, felt deeply uneasy. But even so, he did not stop the man, because he knew that only if the soldier died here would he have a chance to survive. When life is on the line, Almost everyone is selfish. Just as the Southern soldier was about to stop moving, the man heard more soldiers approaching in the distance. He had no choice but to punch the soldier unconscious, then quickly lift William up and continue running. After finally escaping the Southern soldiers, the man yelled at William in frustration. He blamed William for the deaths of his companions. He believed those Southern soldiers attacked them only because they were hunting William. Saying this, he angrily gathered his things and left William behind. The injured William knew that this man might be his only hope of surviving in the forest. He begged him not to leave, and the man, whose heart was naturally kind, eventually stopped walking. But in reality, the ones who attacked them were not Southern soldiers, nor were they searching for William, but hired men sent by the plantation owner. Their goal was to hunt down and kill the enslaved people who had escaped. By checking each name and photo, they confirmed that the man traveling with William was their final target. At this moment, William, though he did not truly like enslaved people, needed someone to care for him because of his injured leg. This man was his only option, so even though the man barely acknowledged him, William still struggled to follow closely behind. Seeing William exhausted and weak, the man finally felt pity. He lifted William with all his strength and carried him onward, but William's injuries seemed to be getting worse, and they had run out of water. Yet they still had not escaped the wilderness. They kept moving, stopping and starting, forcing themselves forward. Eventually, completely drained, they could no longer take another step. To gain even the slightest chance of survival, the man fired a shot into the sky just before collapsing. Fortunately, that single gunshot drew hope toward them. The sudden sound attracted an old man living in the wilderness to avoid the war. When William opened his eyes again, he found himself inside a wooden cabin, his leg wound carefully bandaged. The one who saved them was a quiet, reserved old man. Although he saved them, he did not like white people. More importantly, he immediately recognized that William was a deserter. He didn't want to bring trouble upon himself and his family by helping William, so he gave William only 3 days to rest and demanded that he leave afterward. After hearing this from his companion, William felt deeply disappointed. What made him even more hopeless was that the old man was willing to let his companion stay and live with them, simply because they shared the same background. This meant that in 3 days, William would have to leave alone, walking with a crutch and a limp. To earn the right to stay and heal, William tried to build a good relationship with the old man's family, but he found that all of them simply stared at him in silence, saying nothing. Even the youngest child remained unusually quiet. At that moment, William realized that their dislike of people like him had long been deeply rooted. Hoping to stay and recover here was nothing more than wishful thinking. Meanwhile, his companion, who looked different from him, blended into the family effortlessly. Hearing the laughter behind him, William's eyes filled with frustration and helplessness. That night, unable to suppress his emotions any longer, William finally told his companion what he truly felt. He demanded to know why his companion was willing to abandon him and live comfortably here alone. Hearing this, the man stood up without a word and removed his shirt. Seeing the scars left by beatings all over his companion's body, William immediately fell silent. He shouted in anger that he had been enslaved since childhood and did not even know who his parents were. What he faced every day was labor and beatings and labor. Now that he had finally escaped and finally found a warm home, he asked why he should not be allowed to stay. Hearing his companion's outcry, William had no words. Only then did he truly understand the man before him. Although his companion always smiled and joked with others, behind that smiling face were wounds too heavy to speak of. In the end, William said goodbye to him and continued his journey alone. But that night, while he slept, someone suddenly woke him up. He slowly opened his eyes and saw the same man his companion had failed to kill in the forest. Looking around, William realized he was surrounded by pursuers. Their captain told William that if he revealed the whereabouts of the runaway man who had escaped with him, they would let him go. Panicked, William thought for a long time but eventually stayed silent and gently shook his head. The captain stared at him with cold menace. William lied, saying that he and his companion had gone separate ways days ago and that he had no idea where the man had gone. But a captain that sharp would not believe him so easily. He began asking every kind of question, all seemingly unrelated yet subtly connected to his companion. Fortunately, William stayed alert and answered every question without revealing anything. After a long round of questioning, the captain realized he would gain nothing useful from William and left with his men. But as soon as they disappeared, William's companion suddenly appeared. Without a word, he put out the fire and rushed off with William. He had come because he could not stop worrying about the injured William. He planned to escort him safely out of the forest before returning to the old man's home to live a quiet life. These two, who once looked down on each other, had now become close friends. They even promised that when the war ended, they would become neighbors. But that morning, they heard a gunshot in the distance. Alert! They quietly moved closer to investigate. They saw the same captain who had been chasing them interrogating two captured men. The captain intended to ask who their owner was so he could return them for a reward, but the two men only stared at him in anger without saying a word. Enraged, the captain shot them both. Watching people like him being killed so ruthlessly filled William's companion with fury. At that moment, he realized that without helping the Northern Army win the war, even staying with the old man would not bring lasting peace, so he abandoned the idea of living quietly and decided to join the Northern Army. He wanted William to go with him, but William had once used a bayonet to injure himself just to escape the army. After everything he had done to run away, how could he return so easily? Seeing this, his companion angrily called William a selfish coward. The two parted on bad terms. After he left, William stood frozen in place for a long time. He returned to where the two men had been killed. Looking at their bodies, his companion's harsh words echoed again and again in his ears. He fell into deep doubt. At that moment, he heard a gunshot. He immediately thought of his companion. He ran toward the sound with all his strength, and there he found his companion pinned to the ground and beaten by the captain's men. William could only hide nearby, staring helplessly. Soon, the captain hung a rope from a tree. He planned to end William's companion right there. Seeing him moments from death, William finally gathered his courage and rushed out. Though he was alone and unarmed, he still had to try. His conscience would not allow him to watch his companion be killed. The captain stared at the thin, unarmed William with mocking amusement. Suddenly entertained, he changed his plan. Instead of ending the man immediately, he ordered his men to stab William's companion in the thigh. Then he handed William a pistol and said he would slowly torment the man, and if William wanted to spare him pain, he should end him himself. He guided William's hand and slowly lifted the gun. William knew he had little chance of saving his companion, but he still resolved to risk everything, even his own life. So he seized the moment, turned sharply and fired at the captain's men. But the gun held no bullet. The captain burst into laughter. Having lost his patience, he held William down and ordered his men to pull the rope. He wanted William to watch his companion die. Helpless and furious, William could only watch as his companion died in front of him. After burying him, William sliced his own palm and smeared his blood on the grave. He vowed to join the Northern Army and return to the battlefield. He would fight for his companion and for everyone who shared the same tragic fate. Then he rose and rushed toward the Northern Army's camp. I'm a film enthusiast. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel and see you next time.